There you go. Meeting's being live streamed. Be setting up and going. I think we should be good to go. All right. Well, all of you, thank you for joining us. This is an amazing opportunity, right, to have two amazing representatives, both one in the state Senate, or excuse me, U.S. Senate, sorry, and I will say, Senator Padilla was my state senator when I was in high school, so hence I went back to the good old days, right? And
just trying to make me feel old, man. Just trying to make me feel old.
No. Hey, I will tell you, as someone who now works at your alma mater, right, San Fernando High School, you know, it's been a nice, interesting side to hear about your guys' past and to hear about all the great times. I've had a lot of parents, and I've seen you guys post, you know, on your personal pages and everything about the rich history of San Fernando. So it was nice to be able to join the San Fernando Tigers family this year. So as part of the staff there. So thank you both to you and to Congressman Cardenas. We're also joined by LACDP Chair Mark Gonzalez. So I'm gonna actually have Mark say a few words because I know he's in between events and he wanted to stop by. So Mark.
All right, well, good evening, everybody. Good evening, Democrats. Good evening, sisters and brothers. Hello, thank you all for being here this evening. You can be anywhere else, but you chose to be here with us this evening. You're gonna hear from two phenomenal leaders in our state, two phenomenal Latino leaders leading our state, leading our country. And I'm looking forward, and I thank you all for allowing me to join them alongside this evening and for inviting me to speak for a couple of minutes. I'm truly proud of the grassroots headquarters and the DPSFV and all of you guys that you have done to put not only today, but to make sure that we have an operation every 2 years. It feels like there's an election every 3 months, it seems. But you guys have really been hitting the ground running, and you are the boots on the ground. Just to shout out some of those clubs who are making tonight and co-hosting tonight. Burbank Democratic Club, Democratic Club of Conejo Valley, Democrats Neighborhood Action Democrats of the Protection of Animals, Feel the Burn Democratic Club of the San Fernando Valley, Glendale Democratic Club, Los Angeles County Young Democrats, Miracle Mile Democratic Club, North Valley Democratic Club, Pacific Palisades Democratic Club, Simi Valley Democratic Club, and of course, Stonewall Democratic Club. I hope I didn't miss anybody. If I did, blame Drexel. If I didn't, give me some kudos for that. But the reality, folks, is we're 13 days away from this Republican recall. And as you may remember, you know, the recall of 2003 threw our state into both chaos and truly did set us back. All the progress we have done together, especially at the grassroots level, would be rolled back by not only executive order, but through statewide and countywide gubernatorial appointments, line item budget vetoes on key priorities like clean energy, gun safety laws, access to healthcare, and so much more, and the list can go on. Since 2018, we know that our governor and Democrats like Senator Padilla and Representative Cardenas have been working really hard to, you know, on our behalf and on our state, and how the governor has made the leader and throughout this pandemic for 39 million Californians. We need to be continuing to encourage our friends, our family, our tias, our neighbors, our tios, fellow Democrats to really return those ballots as soon as possible. Once we end this wasteful, time-consuming recall, we can focus on the issues that Senator Padilla and Representative Cardenas have been working on in Congress and in DC. We must, as Democrats, end the filibuster, and Senator Padilla has been a leading champion and voice in ensuring that this archaic mechanism doesn't stop the work President Biden and Vice President Harris have prioritized. Voting rights are on the line, and recently, thanks to Representative Cardenas and the House Democrats passing the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, we are one step closer to ensuring all Americans, Democrats, Republicans, independents, know that their vote is secure, protected, and not suppressed. The Senate must act to move critical legislation forward, just like they did recently in infrastructure, and what they will do on the budget and so many other key priorities that are vital to our state and our county. I know you're all here tonight to hear from our two amazing guests, Alex Padilla and Congressman Cardenas. I just want to thank you all again for your leadership and your work. It's not easy, the stuff that we do. We know that out there, Latinos need to turn their ballots in and young people need to turn their ballots in. And so you guys are going to be that marker of change, because this Golden State needs to go forward in the progress that we've made and not go backwards. So thank you all for your leadership. And thank you, Congressman Cardenas and Senator Padilla, for your leadership tonight. Thank you both.
Thank you, Mark.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark. And again, thank you all to those amazing clubs that have joined us and co-hosting this event. When I started off my term as chair, I invited elected officials to join me in fireside chats. One of the first elected officials to take me up on that offer was Congressman Cardenas. We had a very lively discussion, and I think it led to some really great discussion with some of the activists. I've had the pleasure of working with a lot of Congressman Cardenas' staff, and I've had the pleasure of actually getting to know Congressman Cardenas throughout my tenure in DPSFV. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Congressman Tony Cardenas.
Thank you, Sean. I'll leave my opening remarks for after Alex Padilla, Senator Padilla, excuse me, is done. I'm going to give him the floor because he has to get to a very important family function, family first. And thank you, Senator, for being here and always making the time. The floor is yours.
All right. Well, thank you, Congressman. And I'll sort of give my opening remarks and wait to hear yours and hang on for a question or two if I can before jump into a family commitment here. But first and foremost, my God, Mark took the thunder, from both of us. Just so articulate, so compelling, so concise on why. First of all, the task at hand, less than 14 days till September 14th. We have to defeat this power grab of a Republican recall. So I know everybody here has signed up for phone banking, for text banking, for whatever we need to do to get everybody in our networks returning their ballots. What genius came up with sending every registered voter a ballot in the mail ahead of the election? That was just brilliant. Now we just got to make sure folks are filling them out, returning them. As long as it's postmarked on or before election day, you don't even need a stamp. Just drop it in the mail. It doesn't get easier than that. For folks who need assistance or prefer to vote in person, you can go to any vote center in the county. Over several days of in-person voting plus election day, in-person early voting plus election day. Again, brilliant. Who were the masterminds behind that? Just kidding. But all joking aside, we know what's at stake. Mark laid it out pretty clearly, and I can tell you all the issues that we're fighting for in the Senate. California has led the way on so many issues, from immigrant rights, combating climate change, choice, equality, on and on and on. And the choice that California voters now have to decide is, are we going to continue in the direction of progress and democratic values, or are we going to go backwards? Because we know that's what the Republican Party wants to do. They want to take us back to the political climate of 1994 or worse. And so it's up to us to make sure that the right outcome comes of the recall. And I'm going to raise the bar. I'm going to share with everybody here tonight what I've shared with the governor and his team. In my opinion, as a proud Democrat, it is not enough to defeat this recall 51-49. I mean, if we do that, Republicans are going to spin it as they have the momentum going into the midterms. There's blood in the water. Democrats are vulnerable. So we got to defeat this thing by double digits or more. So I'm going to raise the bar for all of us to make sure we're getting out the vote and squashing this recall and sending a powerful message. My colleagues on the East Coast keep talking about the Virginia governor's race later this year as a bellwether for the midterm elections. Well, in California, we got one coming up even sooner than that. So the whole nation is watching. Let's make our message loud and clear so that I can get back to Washington, D.C. and continue to fight for California values and priorities in the infrastructure package, to continue fighting for long overdue immigration reform, to continue fighting for not just infrastructure investments to fill some potholes, but to address climate change in the process, and of course, defend our fundamental right to vote. and so much more. So thank you, Democrats, for signing up, for tuning in today, but for all your activism and advocacy day in and day out. And it's great to be reunited with my brother, Tony Cardenas, in the nation's capital, not in City Hall, not in the state capital, but in the nation's capital, trying to represent the San Fernando Valley to the best of our ability. Go Tigers.
Thank you, Senator. I'll go ahead and continue, Sean. Thank you, Senator, and appreciate this opportunity to be with you and to share with all of our members of all the different clubs around the Valley and beyond. As you can look at the list, it's not just the San Fernando Valley, it's a brotherhood and sisterhood of people beyond the San Fernando Valley. And I just want to say thank you, Elise and Sean, and also Mark, who was with us a few minutes ago. Thank you for just being on the front lines, being in the trenches every single day. And that's one of the amazing things that makes Democrats the party of the people, because we are in the communities every day. We understand what it's like to deal with all these everyday issues. And that's what's in our heart, to make sure that people don't suffer and that people are better off. For example, Senator and I are working on the Green New Deal together. We're working on other environmental issues as well. We both introduced the bill, him in the Senate, me in the House, the Clean School Bus for Kids Act. $25 billion was our proposal. Some people are like, oh my God, that's a lot of money. That's not enough. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about 500,000 school buses around America that need to be cleaned up. Those are our children that are having to ride those school buses. We work on healthcare issues. Just since COVID hit us over a year and a half ago, Washington, and we got the biggest shot in the arm after Biden became our president, after Senator Padilla became our senator. We have pulled into California $500 billion in all of the COVID packages combined. And that is for people to make sure that they're not starving, making sure that people who've lost their work, and some people have been out of work for over a year now, making sure that they still get those payments to make sure that they don't lose their home. They can put food on the table. Again, these are democratic values, ladies and gentlemen. And this recall is trying to put a dent in that in our California. And we're not going to let that happen. We're also working on other issues that have to do with not just COVID-19, but healthcare in general. We're talking about, making sure that Medicare for all is something that everybody can achieve, and that we can raise the bar, and making sure that millions more Americans, that every single person exercises their right, not the privilege, but their right to be able to see a doctor, to be able to go in, and not the emergency room, but being able to go into a facility where they will attend you. And let me tell you, I grew up in a household where it was 11 children, and our two parents, one income. And for a while there, the only time we saw a doctor was at the emergency room. Why? Because it just wasn't in the cards, ladies and gentlemen. We did not have healthcare coverage. No person, no child, no family should go through that. And that's what we're fighting for in Washington. There's so much more that we're fighting for. But I know that the senator needs to leave. So let's get to the Q&A, Sean, and so that the senator can participate in this as much as possible before he has to go.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. So the first question comes from Raymond Beltran. So, and Mr. Beltran, I'm going to ask, you have two questions, but it seems like one, they're very similar. So I'm going to go ahead and ask it in this fashion, okay? Thanks both of you for your time, and mentions, as a supporter of the Borgen Project, I have been watching the global effects of the COVID pandemic. The Delta variant has shown how important it is to treat the international roots of the issue. So in your capacity, how do you plan to tackle this pandemic globally? And simply, we understand vaccinating Americans for the virus, we know will not protect us all from the mutations abroad, but how do you plan on, in your office, responding to the challenges?
Yeah, I'll just start by saying it's not an either or. I know a lot of people ask the question of, do we need to just promote vaccines in the United States? Clearly, we have more work to do there with those who refuse to believe the science, who refuse to follow the science and get their first vaccinations. Of course, before you know it, we're going to be promoting booster shots for folks who have been vaccinated some time ago. That is not in lieu of making sure we're working with our allies around the world to promote vaccination and supply of vaccines for a lot of other countries that are still coming up to speed, because that's what we need to protect the planet. It's an increasingly global society, an increasingly global economy, and until we tackle COVID-19 on a global basis, we're going to continue to have to live in the days of required face masks, social distancing, hand sanitizer, all that stuff. So the more we can promote vaccines in our own communities and beyond, and working with the administration, both manufacturing, supply, distribution to other countries, the United States will continue to lead when it comes to COVID.
I want to fill in a little bit more on what the senator just pointed out. He's absolutely right. Those are the things that we're focused on and we're doing, every single one of us. But at the same time, what we're doing out of our offices is making sure that we help disseminate information and communicate, especially with vulnerable communities, in more than one language, okay? And then secondly, when it comes to international vaccines and health for people around the world, for example, I just got off a Zoom today with the Ambassador Bahrain. He was in DC, I'm in my district today, and that's one of the subjects that we talked about. We talked about partnering together and making sure that the lessons that they learned in this little tiny country, Bahrain, and democracy, by the way, and then the United States of America, that we need to continue to reach out to those communities, those countries, those sovereign nations who have not had the opportunity to have as much as 10% or more of their people vaccinated. The little country of Bahrain is very fortunate. They're at 70% plus now. So as tiny as they are ready, willing, and able to partner with the United States to reach out to the countries less fortunate than us to make sure that everybody gets the vaccine. I was also on a Zoom earlier together with one of my groups of Democrats in the House. That was one of the subjects that we were talking about. There are too many people, with all due respect, they tend to sit on the other side of the aisle as Republicans, who are saying, no, we should take care of America first. Like the senator said, it's not an either or. This world is getting smaller and smaller. At any given moment, we all know that somebody could land at LAX from anywhere in the world. And the bottom line is this: in order to do the right thing as human beings, we need to make sure that people are protected all over the world. It can be done. We can do it. We're very proud, the United States, to be the leader in the number of vaccines being able to be available to people who want it more than any other country on the planet. And we're going to continue to do that, not only taking care of Americans, but making sure that we share our fortunes with everybody that we can to save lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Raymond, for that question. Our next question comes from R.L. Miller. Simply says, hi there. I was very impressed with yours and Senator Padilla's electric bus bill, and DPSFV endorsed it, as she presented the bill. President Biden's request for electric buses in the bipartisan infrastructure framework was $7.5 billion. And by the time the bipartisan bill passed the Senate, it was down to $5.6 billion, including a provision that $1.4 billion of that be spent on natural gas / polluting vehicles. Is there a possible fix to that in the House version of the bipartisan bill? What's your take? What do you think?
Yeah, well, if it's okay with you, Congressman, let me add a couple of thoughts first before I have to excuse myself for my next event. But look, this is a beautiful example of what our lived experience means for our representation, right? Both Congressman Cardenas and I, growing up in the Northeast San Fernando Valley, I remember a few years being one of those kids that rode a school bus. More than 90% of bus fleets in America today are school buses, and more than 90% of those are diesel. And if you've ever ridden one like me, you'll never forget what that diesel exhaust smells like. So retiring diesel school buses, replacing them with zero emission buses, huge priority and a win-win-win when it comes to policy. Yes, it's better for the environment. It's also better for our public health, and it's better for academic performance, because healthier kids learn better. Sicker kids have a tougher time because, when you're sick, battling respiratory disease, it's going to affect your studies. And so that's why it's such a priority for ours. Yes, it's a mixed news here. It wasn't as much money as we would have hoped, or as even the President Biden had proposed. My understanding, there's a couple of pots of funding. There's a dedicated amount just for zero emission vehicles. And the one proven technology already on the streets are electric buses. There's a secondary pot not the natural gas piece that was referenced, but a low emission and zero emission technology bucket with a lot of latitude for the administration to write the rules on how those monies are going to be awarded. And yes, electric buses and other zero emission technologies are eligible for that second bucket. So north of $5 billion conceivably, if the Biden administration gets this right, and it should be easy for them to get it right, will go towards electric buses, not the amount that Congressman and I first asked for, but here's the big win. It is now a permanent, ongoing program that will be funded year in and year out in the federal budget. It's not a one-time amount and that's it. It is now cemented, or will be cemented once it's passed by the House, signed into law by the president. So I think it's still a huge step forward, big amount of progress. Happy to be part of the effort and happy to lead on the Senate side what Congressman Cardenas has been calling for on the House side for many, many years. So with that, I'll kick it over to him to follow up. And again, thank you everybody for your activism. Don't forget to vote. September 14th is the last day.
Thank you, Senator. Everything Senator said is a great synopsis of where we are and how we arrived here. Yes, the Senate negotiated and the administration also negotiated with the Senate, and they pared down that number. But let me remind everybody on this call, Senator Padilla and I were in constant contact and communication. I was in constant contact communication with Nancy Pelosi, our speaker, and also with a few senators in the Senate. And what I wanted to make sure that the senator pointed out at the last part of what he just said is, it is a permanent program. It is a new program, which means that means it has permanency, because that's the future. We don't want this one-time shot and then us to have to fight for it again. And in addition to that, our bill had $25 billion over the next 10 years, because you're not going to get 500,000 school buses built and out there on the streets in 1 year or even 2 years. So what the senator and I are committed to doing, we immediately got together and started talking about how are we going to approach to make sure that we just add to it and add to it and add to it. I'll be honest with you, it would have been nice to get the 25 billion earmarked into this legislation and actually funded and then to be used over the next 25 years. It's a lot more work for the senator and I to have to do it every year. But we're ready to do it because it's that important. And we want to demonstrate that the United States of America, especially when it comes to the environment, we've been following some countries when it comes to policy. But the one thing that we should be proud of is we never should have been following, because we were always the leaders of technology. And the bottom line is, for us to follow is a shame. And Senator Padilla and I don't know if y'all know this, but he's an MIT engineer, much smarter than me. I just went down the road to UC Santa Barbara, got my electrical engineering degree there. But the bottom line is we are very, very cognizant of what it takes to get this legislation where it needs to be and to make sure that we salvage the best parts of it. And making it a permanent program is something that we were not about to let go of. And I'm very proud of the senator for making sure that it stayed in the legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. So let's see, we're moving on to the next question. And this next question comes from Michael Kalorj. How do we help local rural municipalities set up their own municipal broadband networks? So is there any sort of legislation that is coming about, that's already being worked on, that we can, support as DPSFV and as, local clubs that, how can we help you, right? Help us and ensure this.
The reality of local municipalities, I used to be a councilman, so was Senator Padilla. And then there's a handful of us in Washington that used to be council members or mayors or what have you. And the bottom line is this: a lot of the smaller municipalities, they don't have the ability to go ahead and take it on their own, unless they were to get a massive grant, and then a grant that actually is overwhelmingly large enough for them to actually depend on the grant only to go ahead and build out that infrastructure for it to be owned municipally. So what the likely scenario is going to be, it's going to be that across America, not every jurisdiction, for example, the city of Los Angeles, the county of Los Angeles, if they chose to, they probably could make a mechanism where they could actually take on broadband as an internal municipal authority. But likely what's going to happen is we're going to have grants from the federal government, grants from the state government, going down to local cities and counties, and then they're going to partner with the folks who are already in the business of, and make sure that they have ironclad agreements that they can't just build where they feel like building. They're going to have to build out those systems everywhere, not just in the wealthy neighborhoods, but in the neighborhoods who need it the most, like Pacoima, where Alex Padilla and I grew up. So the answer to the question is likely what we're going to see is us continuing to give grants and hopefully bigger grants and more massive grants to local municipalities so that they can make sure that they build out that infrastructure as quickly as possible. Too many municipalities, they admit, the number of zeros that we need on that grant is probably more than they're going to be able to get. So they're not able to do it by grants alone. Most municipalities don't have the money already in their general fund to go ahead and dedicate it to broadband and to the modern technology infrastructure.
Thank you. Next question comes to us from our Simi Valley Club rep, Jody Cooper. So what is Congress doing to protect Roe v. Wade now that the Supreme Court did not stop the abortion law in Texas?
What is Congress doing? Well, what we're doing in the House is we're always very aggressive. We have taken clauses out of existing legislation and changed it to make sure that access to a woman's right to choose is available. Now, Congress is one branch of government. The Supreme Court is another branch of government. We just got to hope and pray that the Supreme Court doesn't take it up, because the way this conservative court is, very likely a woman's right to choose is going to be not only jeopardized, but it's going to be decimated. And that's not something that any of us wish or want. And so basically what we're doing in the House is making sure that we're taking language that's already in existing legislation and stripping those limitations from, for example, when it comes to federal funding for healthcare and things of that nature. So again, that's the polar opposite of what the Republicans are trying to do.
Very accurate. Next is from Lester Aponte. So Congressman Cardenas, do you support the Puerto Rico Admissions Act, which would outline clear processes to enable Puerto Rico's admission into the Union as a state? And he also wants to thank Senator Padilla for co-sponsoring that particular bill.
Mm-hmm. I signed on to that Puerto Rico Admission Act in May of this year. I believe that self-determination of Puerto Rico is up to them, the people of Puerto Rico, the American citizens of Puerto Rico, but they are a territory. And unfortunately, territories, and just like indigenous nations around the country, we have over 500 federally recognized tribes. Territories and tribes are constantly being left out of legislation. Even though many of us continue to put that in the legislation, it falls out of the final legislation before it's passed. And so Puerto Rico becoming a state, I think personally, I think that would be good for Puerto Rico, but with all due respect, Puerto Rico should determine for themselves. The people of Puerto Rico, the voters of Puerto Rico, the American citizens of Puerto Rico should make that determination. And if they make that determination that they will want to become a state in the Union, then I'm going to do everything that I can to make sure that they are able to add to the unions of the United States, so that they can be in Puerto Rico. It's called statehood. If any of you have been in Puerto Rico, the last thing you want to do is open up the argument about whether it's statehood or what, because you're going to get 10 people arguing 10 different arguments at any given moment. But I respect the fact that it's the people of Puerto Rico that should make that determination. But if they do, they're welcome as a state, as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you. Well, we addressed Roe v. Wade, but another group that is, marginalized, attacked frequently is our DACA recipients, right? And unfortunately, it's always an earpiece, and there's a talking point to this. I know you have led on a lot, but can you give us a brief update? Like, what are we doing to support our DACA recipients, especially, they feel supported, right, by a Democratic president. However, we've seen a lot of folks kind of still hesitant on renewing DACA because there's not real substantial change that they've seen. So, how can we support them still in this time that, DACA is still not official, right? It's not an official stance in law.
It's not a law, correct. It was an interpretation by the Obama administration, and they wrote it as carefully as they could. I was in the meeting with the Hispanic Caucus and President Obama when he made a commitment to us and to America that they were going to write the document of DACA as an executive order, and they followed through with that. I also am reporting to all of you that under President Biden, just recently, a few weeks ago, the Hispanic Caucus members went ahead and met with President Biden and talked specifically about immigration writ large. And what President Biden basically said was, what do you need from me? I made a commitment to all of you that comprehensive immigration reform was going to be high on my agenda, and it is. What does the Hispanic Caucus, what does Congress need from me in order for me to help get it across the finish line and to my desk? So that's great news. That's the most aggressive statement and welcome I've ever heard from a president or heard of from a president in the United States when it comes to immigration. So the DACA recipients are a subset of comprehensive immigration reform. Senator Padilla, myself, we've all signed on to various bills that have to do with Dreamers, they have to do with TPS, they have to do with every category of immigrant that deserves to have a path to citizenship. So those bills are in motion, those bills are moving. In addition to that, one of the commitments that we were able to clarify for the President of the United States that we plan, the Hispanic Caucus and the House of Representatives plans on making sure that we get immigration reforms in the reconciliation process. And there's nothing so far that we've heard that says that legally we cannot. So we're going to use every legal means available to us to get as many people as possible through the process of changing our immigration laws, which will benefit our DACA young people.
Of course. The next question comes from Melissa Walk. Do Democratic lawmakers have a plan to protect California's policies and practices? Unfortunately, if this governor is recalled, right? So, for example, such as wildfire policy, the CO2 emissions regulations, housing programs, etc. So, as a leader within our party and in the state, is there a plan on how we can combat a potential, horrific outcome of Larry Elder governor if that were ever to happen? I hope not, but just in case.
First of all, Larry Elder is not going to become the governor, but in case that horrible scenario actually plays out, we have basically a 2/3 majority in both the Senate, the state Senate, and the state assembly in California, which means that whatever a Governor Elder would do would be overridden immediately by the legislature. And then secondly, the legislature writes legislation. So these laws are not going to be rewritten by the legislature. The governor may try to steer the administrative authorities, the commissions, et cetera, to actually not stand by the law. And as every moment that happens, there's going to be a lawsuit, and that lawsuit hopefully will immediately have a stay on the governor's ridiculous illegal actions. And then by that, we're going to be able to hold off any Governor Elder or any Republican governor from dismantling the good environmental laws that we have in California, that we're still trying to implement and protect the environment as much as possible. And then also remember this, if the worst case scenario were to happen, we're not going to have this person there beyond the end of 2022. We're going to see that we're going to have a Democratic governor again in the 2022 cycle.
Thank you. So you and your colleagues in the Northeast San Fernando Valley targeted Latino voters, especially with a base that it hasn't been
in a good way.
Yes,
We
yes,
target them in a good, because
Yes,
Republicans target them in a bad way. So go ahead.
yes. We're targeting them to ensure that their ballots filled out, right? They're turning in their ballot for this recall election. So we had this great caravan, this past weekend. But what else? What can we do? What else can we do to just do our part, right? So that we are successful, right, on the 14th, and we're not in this limbo of, oh my God, we don't know what's happening, right? So what else do you think we can do that we're not already doing? And is there anything that you would like for us to join? Would like for us to join you in this recall?
Every ballot that will be submitted is going to be a mail-in ballot. So that means that people don't have a few hours to vote. They've had weeks, they have days left, 2 weeks left to vote. So therefore, we as Democrats need to do what we do best, and that is to be good stewards of our community, of our families, of our neighborhood, and go to our friends and people we work with, people we live with, people who are in our neighborhood, and ask them if they voted yet. And if they say, gosh, there's an election, or whatever response they give, we need to make sure that we remind them, this is what the ballot looks like. Why don't you go ahead and fill it out, or what have you? And the law in California allows you to walk somebody through it so that they can actually do it right and seal it. And again, like the former Secretary of State, or US Senator Padilla just mentioned, you don't even need a stamp. So the bottom line is, what do we need to do? What should we do? We have 2 weeks to make sure that every person in California, especially every Democratic person in California, actually mails in their ballot and gets it in on time. So what we need to do, Sean, is exactly what Democrats do best. We talk to our neighbors. We care about our community. We care about our friends, and just make sure that our friends and our neighbors and our family members, that everybody participates and everybody votes, because everybody got a ballot. Everybody got a ballot. And who made that happen? That was former Secretary of State Alex Padilla, who now happens to be our United States Senator. So the bottom line is, the die is cast. Everything's sitting there literally on people's table at home. They have their ballot. So what can we do, Sean? We need to make sure that every single one of us remind everybody. Look, we still have a couple of millennials living in my house. And my wife and I are staunch voters every time, all the time. And we're reminding them, hey, have you voted yet, right? And the bottom line is making sure that they voted. Again, not being mean about it, right? Not being nasty about it. Just reminding them how important it is. I mean, who the heck wants a Larry Elder as a governor? That would be a disaster. A nightmare for women, a nightmare for the environment, a nightmare for everybody. That's not like, we can't let that happen.
Of course. Well, I think we're coming close towards the end, and I don't see any other questions having been submitted. So, Congressmember, this is your opportunity. Leave us with any good closing remarks and anything you want us to support, right? Especially because I know you've been doing some great work and have championed some really great legislation. So let us know how we can help, and I'll leave you to it.
Well, thank you very much, Sean. And again, thank you so much, Elise, for I saw your little notes reminding us how much time we have. Thank you. Somebody needed to do it. And just letting you know that people like Senator Padilla and I, the Democrats, thank God, the Democratic members are now in charge of both houses. In the US Senate, unfortunately, it's a bit frustrating. We have a couple of Democratic senators who are being a little difficult about making sure that we can march forward and really be aggressive about our legislation. But mark my words, the House of Representatives is in charge of the House. And when you look at our legislation, the John Lewis Act and all of the things that have to do with voting rights, it has to do with immigrants' rights, it has to do with healthcare, it has to do with all these things. We're passing those bills, and we're going to continue to do that. And our job, your job as Democratic clubs and organizations is to remind everybody all the things that we have yet to fulfill and make sure that we keep Democratic members in power so that we can actually make things happen. You mentioned earlier, one of the questions was about a woman's right to choose. Let me tell you, we are polar opposites on that, Democrats and Republicans. So it's incumbent upon every single one of us to keep pushing each other, to keep reminding each other about what our values are and what needs to be done. And we're going to continue to do that. Senator Padilla is amazing. I'm so glad that he's there. I'm going to put in a little plug for my wife and his wife. Senator Padilla always returns my call. He always returns my text because I have a secret weapon. My wife, Norma, and her good friend, Lexi, played Cupid. And they said, hey, we think we have the perfect person for Alex, right? And I'm like, hey, I'm not getting into this one. You know, it's a little bit above my pay grade. And then, so they did. So I was on that magical, beautiful, fall in love first date that Alex Padilla had with his wonderful wife, Angela. And Norma was there, and another couple of couples were there. And we saw the sparks fly, and now they're married and they have 3 beautiful kids. So my secret weapon, ladies and gentlemen, is this. If Alex doesn't return my call or my text or what have you, all I have to do is tell Norma. Norma tells Angela, and Angela says, hey, how come you haven't called Tony back? And no husband wants to get the elbow from your wife saying, hey, how come you haven't, you know, and then whatever. So anyway, so Senator Padilla and I have a great relationship. All joking aside, he's amazing. I just got goosebumps when I heard that Gavin Newsom picked him to be our U.S. Senator. And he's always been, as council president, the youngest ever council president in the city of Los Angeles, the first United States governor from California, Latino. California's 40% Latino. You all just saw the numbers that just came out from the census. We have an amazing, beautiful state. We have an amazing opportunity to show the rest of the country how things should be done. And look, you're all doing an amazing job. We couldn't do the job that we do without the support of all of you. So thank you so much on behalf of myself and on behalf of Senator Padilla. We count on you, we respect you, we appreciate you so much, and thanks for bringing us together tonight.
Thank you. And again, thank you all to all of our sponsors and co-hosts. You know, DPSFV is an organization that has been around for many, many years. We fostered and nurtured many great relationships, including our Congress member, right, and our U.S. Senator. You know, and so DPSFV is still here, right? We're still kicking. We are supporting the recall. We are a community hub, so we are co-hosting and hosting Saturday phone banks. So if you guys are interested, you can email us at recall@dpsfv.com to get more information. There are other partnership events where we'll be canvassing in the city of Pacoima on GOTV weekend for the recall. That is in partnership with our Young Dems. So San Fernando Valley Young Dems and LACYD will be joining them as they canvass in Pacoima. And, you know, we're doing that work, right? We just really need to make sure everyone joins us along this path because we can make that impact. We can make sure that you know, we're not just at 51%, we exceed that. And, you know, Congressmember, thank you again. Yeah.
Sean, I wanted to mention that, give a shout out to the then very, very young Alex Padilla and me, barely young Tony Cardenas and Stuart Wildman. I was just of the age to be able to be part of the brand new San Fernando Valley Young Democrats. So it was started by the 3 of us. Stuart and Alex got to be members for a lot longer than I was, because I aged out pretty quick after that moment. But again, I just wanted to say thank you. I noticed all the new clubs that are here. Awesome. That's amazing. We are a big tent, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you so much for being part of the clubs that have been around for a while and starting your new clubs. It's our democracy, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm so proud to be a Democrat. Thank you.
No, thank you. And yes, as Congressman Cardenas is saying, so DPSFV is an umbrella organization for 27 different Democratic organizations, from parents to Young Dems, from animal rights activists to housing activists, right? So, you know, I think we represent a plethora of different, you know, opinions and, you know, deals and everything, right? So it's definitely worth getting involved. And, you know, as DPSFV starts to have these events, I know hopefully we can start to have some in-person events, but these virtual events are really nice too. And again, thank you to Congressman Cardenas for the second fireside chat with you. This is always a great opportunity, and I always welcome the opportunities to have our elected officials join us. But yes.
I have one. Sorry, Sean.
No, you're good. You're good.
I don't want to get into trouble. I was texting back and forth with Cesar Milan. You all know him as the dog whisperer guy, but we were making dinner plans, and I told him that I was going to get on a call with all of you, and he told me to tell you all that he said hello, especially for those of you who love animals like he does, and fight for four-legged friends that who can't speak up for themselves. So anyway, hey, there you go. I'd be remiss if I didn't pass that along. My regards from Cesar Milan, who's an amazing person. Maybe one of these days we'll get him on one of these Zooms.
No, definitely. I definitely look forward to that and welcome him, right? As I said, it's an open door policy at DPSFV, right? So everyone is welcome to join us. And again, thank you all for joining us. Thank you all to our hosts, our co-host organizations. And Congressmember, thank you to Nigel on your staff for helping work and put this together. Amazing work, and thank you. And thank you all for joining us again. Look forward to hosting another great event in the near future. And we will talk to y'all soon. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.